Hi, everybody. In this lesson, we will focus on how to write introductions and conclusions. First, we will focus on how to write a hook that leads into a larger introduction and eventually into your thesis statement. And then I will show you how to move in your conclusion from your thesis full circle back to that hook and extending that to a very thought-provoking so what. Okay, so we want to make sure that our hooks are engaging and that they're connected into the idea that we will be focusing on in the first section of the paper. So in other words, you need to create your hook based on the first idea of your thesis statement. So what matters is whatever that first idea is in your thesis statement, that's what you want to base your hook off of, because that's what your readers will see first in your thesis. Okay, so let's pretend that what we are seeing on the screen is our thesis statement. Feel free to pause the screencast and read through in its entirety. And I'm going to walk you through the steps to create a really engaging introduction. And this is the process that I want you to follow for your own essay using your own thesis statement. So the first step is to pull out from the first section of your thesis statement words that are important and have strong connotations. So in this example thesis, there are a lot of great possibilities for words to inspire a hook, and we definitely can't choose them all. You'll see determined there, you'll see selfish, you'll see survivor, you'll see success in bold, you'll see evil, and zombie. So all of these words could be seeds to grow a really effective and interesting hook. The key is to start with a thesis and find words from that first point in your thesis, as we've done here. So go ahead and do that now. I want you to choose in your own thesis 1 to 2 keywords from the first idea of your thesis statement that you could hook into, just like I've done here. All right, so now that you've done this, you'll want to challenge yourself to brainstorm a variety of different ways that this idea is seen in the real world. At this point, we are not concerned with Their Eyes Were Watching God or the literary criticism. Our goal is to think of a really interesting connection to the idea behind one of those strong and loaded words in the first part of the thesis. So here we have selfishness on the left, and we have determination, survivor, and success to the right. And I've grouped the words together because they kind of seemed related to me and I could brainstorm them collectively. So you can do that too if you have words that are connected in that first part of your thesis. I also have some ideas for the words evil and zombie. So for this, we really just need one great idea that can inspire a real world hook. And this is not a question or a quote, but this will be a hook that relies on description, concrete details, and perhaps figurative language to capture your reader's interest. And like I said, this is not yet related to the novel. This is not yet related to the literary critic. You sometimes don't get the greatest idea, the first thing that pops into your head, which is why I would challenge you, like I've done here, to brainstorm a variety of ideas and then look at them and ask yourself which one would be the most interesting or unexpected for the purposes of creating your hook. So I think here we have a lot of great possibilities. The ideas for selfishness are a little bit more interesting to me and present a less straightforward flow of ideas into the thesis statement if we're comparing that with the ones that I have for determination, success, and survivor. If we're going to talk about success, it's kind of predictable to talk about the determination of a real world character who beats the odds. I mean, that is Janie's story after all, so that would be more expected. All of these ideas could work, and they definitely all would be more engaging than a general statement or a question as a hook. I'm also looking at the superhero idea. Where is that? Right here. So the superhero idea, which was triggered by the idea of victory over evil, this could also connect broadly to determination, success, and survival. So this idea, so long as I don't approach it in a predictable way, is what I'm going to choose to build out my hook, because it can connect so broadly to many of these things. That's not to say that I couldn't build an awesome hook out of referencing or describing Forrest Gump as a character, or describing the behavior of a hoarder, or mentioning song lyrics or something like that. So for your own purposes, I want you to brainstorm using those words you selected as many different real world things as possible. So you can do that when you're ready. All right, so after deciding which word and which hook idea to choose, you should write the first part of your introduction with the goal of using strong, specific words and details to draw the reader in without yet revealing the idea in the context of the literary criticism or the novel or the thesis. So I don't want you to simply begin with a general statement or a question or start with a predictable something like according to dictionary.com or giving a quotation to start. You want to capture the reader's interest. So I would suggest a brief anecdote, description, something that will provoke thought, like a philosophical statement. I want you to steer clear of anything that's not thought-provoking, anything that's not descriptive or interesting. I want you to ask yourself if you'd want to read further if you read the first couple sentences of your introduction hook. And if the answer is no, or it's kind of general and boring, that's a sign that you need to work on your introduction hook further. And like I said, it all starts with one word from your thesis that you're going to use to brainstorm a real world connection, and then take that real world connection and find a way to build some description or storytelling or examples around that. This is your hook, okay? So I'm going to talk you through an example full introduction so you'll see what happens after the hook. Here, notice that we are building to the same thesis statement as before, and I'm choosing the idea of superheroes to build out my hook. And I chose to use the strategy of description. So the hook now is a scenario, which you can read here. Feel free to pause as I'm talking through this. So my goal is to get the readers nodding their heads and picturing this 2-year-old with all the dreams in the world, thinking that they can defeat evil. There is a bit of dialogue here. There's show versus tell. There's the idea that we can't let evil win, which is the idea that we're linking into from the thesis statement down here, okay? So we can't just jump right from this hook into the thesis statement, right? We need to build out a little bit of padding. The next step after the hook is one that's often missing in student writing. It helps to smooth out the introduction, and this is a step that more advanced writers may do naturally. And if you've ever found yourself wondering how some students write introductions that just sound so darn good, this is probably why, this extension step. So ask yourself how you can take the idea from your hook a little bit further and connect more broadly to society or human nature in some way. You might want to qualify your statement, have more description, more explanation, but the key is we're not just talking about the 2-year-old anymore. We're talking about what they represent, the bigger picture connection. You can go ahead and read what I wrote here as my extension piece. And notice I am still not talking about my critics' ideas. The goal is just to provide some context for this hook idea. Why are we talking about the 2-year-old? Well, we're linking that to be representative of a larger group of young people who might engage in similar behavior. And I give some examples here, so I'm being specific while I'm still broadening my focus. And you're going to want to be as specific as possible in your hook and your extension, because that's what's engaging to your readers who live in the real world and not in the world of literary criticism and their eyes are watching God. And eventually I get to the idea that every time we as humans root for the underdog, etc., we are celebrating the hero's story. And this is the broader reason why the superhero wannabe kid has such appeal or interest, and why we can look at this kid and connect. We all can celebrate the hero's story just like that kid. So the next step after the extension is you have the link. And in this step, your goal is to get from the extension piece and connect it to the thesis statement's idea down here, okay? So you're showing how you get from the celebration of the hero's story to MT Blood's idea. So notice as I'm linking, I'm repeating the key word celebrate to move from the extension to the link. And I'm saying that perhaps the reason humans love to celebrate heroism is because they realize there's also evil in the world. So look at that. I'm starting to connect to Blood's idea that Janie's success was a victory over an evil society. So to backtrack, I went from, in my link, the idea of celebration to the realization that there is evil in the world. Bringing up the idea of evil here in this first sentence of the link allows me to talk about Blood's idea. So I'm building, building, building. If evil wins, the world loses its beauty, joy, happiness, etc. I'm using listing as a strategy to build. And I've also introduced Blood's idea about evil. So it's in the link and it's also in my thesis, which makes perfect sense now to put the thesis into my introduction. So if I hadn't made the transition from celebration to the idea of evil, I wouldn't be able to get the reader from here to here. Okay. So we're starting to close in on the idea and the sentence where we introduce the novel and like, oh, this is what the paper's really about. Okay. So my blend comes at the end of my link, which is simply put, we cannot let evil win. So I have a quick transition, and then we mention the novel for the first time in the context of this idea. Okay, so we've given all the things we need. We've taken the picture from, we've taken the reader from that big picture idea, the description that's seemingly not connected to anything in particular. We've shown how that represents something bigger about human nature or society. And then we have linked to Blood's idea about evil. And now we are set up to explore the first agree claim in more depth. Okay, so this is a full introduction. And your goal is to, like I said, and you might need to pause this and take some time to think, but you're choosing, like I said, the best word. You're building out an introduction, description, you're extending that, you are finding a way to get from here to here and linking down to the specific idea in the thesis statement before you, at the end of your introduction, give your thesis.
All right, so let's talk quickly about concluding. The goal of the conclusion is to wrap things up, to extend, and to get to the bigger picture, so what, that we've been practicing all year. You want to make your readers think and leave them with a sense of satisfaction. So for your conclusion, I want you to begin with your restated thesis. From there, your goal is to circle back to the idea you used to build out your introduction. We're providing a sense of continuity and connection by reminding the reader of the original context for this idea and then using it to springboard in connection with the idea we've discussed in the claim to a larger so what. Take a moment to read through the example introduction I have here for you, and I want you to notice the progression from specific to broad and from the thesis back to the idea of superheroes, but in a different way than it is used in the hook. Here it is more specific to what the paper talked about with Janie's coming of age, and then extends to provide a so what about the reader as a hero in their own story.